The big news today is that the mayor of Louisville has imposed a curfew at 9 o'clock because the decision has now come down in the case of Breonna Taylor. She is the woman who was killed in March. This was a warrant that was served on the home, and supposedly it was a no-knock warrant, but it turns out that the three officers who went to her home did in fact knock. We know that because the boyfriend, who actually shot when the door was kicked down, admitted that he heard knocks. He said he didn't hear anybody announce who they were, but he said he did hear a knock. The Attorney General, by the way, is the young black man we saw at the Republican National Convention. His name is Daniel Cameron, and he's the one who announced the charges, or lack thereof. None of the three officers was charged with any kind of criminal charge. Two of the officers not charged with anything, and one officer whose bullet, by the way, it's unclear whether or not the bullet even struck Breonna Taylor. The one officer was charged with 3 counts of wanton endangerment for firing erratically. I think even that charge is going to be difficult for a jury to find a conviction, but the point is, no criminal charges. The family was hoping for at least manslaughter or murder too. I told you before, unlikely that that would happen. It turns out that the lawyer who speaks for the family, Benjamin Crump, publicly lied and said that the warrant was served on the wrong home. False. The warrant had exactly the right home, exactly the right address. He also lied and said she was killed as she lay in her bed. Not true. When the officers began knocking, the boyfriend and she got up. Boyfriend got his firearm. Door got knocked down. Boyfriend shoots at the door. He ducks out of the way, and she gets shot, and she gets killed, and he never gets struck. I'm sorry. Now what? Now, some people are saying, well, why was the warrant served in the first place? Well, that's a legitimate question. That has nothing to do with the officers who did not execute the warrant. They were simply following it. 3 officers knocked, apparently for some time. There were some witnesses who said they never heard anybody knock, never heard anybody make any announcement. There was another witness that said they did. And the point is, when you knock, the idea is for the people inside the house to hear, not for surrounding witnesses to hear. So I'm not quite sure it's relevant that some witnesses said they didn't hear a knock, but at least one said he did hear a knock and heard them announce that they were coming. Even though the warrant did not require it, they did it anyway. Now what? Now what? Protests already forming. Did I mention that the city council president is also black? And their new police chief is a black female. She was not there during this time. Another officer was there before. So now Louisville has a black female police chief, a black head of their city council. It's called Metro Council, or Metro Area, Metro Council. The AG who declined to bring charges against these 3 officers is black. And by the way, why is it we assume that because of what happened, that what happened was a result of race? Yes, the 3 officers were white. Yes, Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend are black. Therefore, it would have gone down differently had everything been the same, except the warrant was served on a home occupied by 2 white people. Knock on the door, announce themselves, knock down the door, person inside the door shoots, they return fire. That wouldn't have happened if the person shooting had been white. Really? So now what? I thought the whole point in having diversity in positions of responsibility is so that when something like this went down and when somebody investigated it, you had some confidence that the investigation was done thoroughly and accurately and fairly. So now are you assuming that the AG is on the take? The AG is a racist? The AG is an Uncle Tom? The AG is what? What? He's a Republican, so therefore you can't trust him? What? This is getting pretty ridiculous, isn't it? You got Baltimore in 2015 where Freddie Gray died. You've got the number 2 and number 1 guys running the police department, black. 3 of the officers charged, black. A judge before whom 2 of the cases decided to try their case. He, by the way, found him not guilty, black. The state attorney who brought the charges against the 6, black. The U.S. attorney at the time, Loretta Lynch, black. The president of the United States at the time, black. And we're talking about institutional, systemic, foundational racism. Really? Protest first, get the facts later. What are you protesting? Why aren't you mad at the boyfriend who says he heard a knock, door got knocked down, he shoots? He claims he thought it was her ex-boyfriend coming there to do damage, I guess, and they didn't charge him with any crimes. Why is this something that you're taking to the streets over? You're not happy that 3 officers were not charged with second-degree homicide, and then they were to be charged. And then when there's an ethnic jury impaneled, and when the jury does not get a conviction, then what? So you want them to be charged anyway? And we go through this exercise like you did with Freddie Gray? And I told you when those 3 officers were charged, I said, nobody's going to get convicted. The evidence is not there. They tried one. It was hung jury. Then they tried another one before the judge, as I mentioned, not guilty. Tried another one before a judge, not guilty. And then they decided not to proceed with the other 3 charges with the other officers because the evidence wasn't there. The charges were brought because the community wanted them brought. Okay, fine. Now what? And then the community doesn't get the verdict that they want, and now racism? Was it racism before they brought the charges or after they brought the charges when they didn't have any grounds to do so? What is this? We're going to have this every single time somebody gets shot who's so-called unarmed? And I say so-called because her boyfriend obviously was armed. That's why they shot back. This isn't television where they duck out of the way and say, is anybody in there? We're police. Please don't shoot us. It's not the way it works. My goodness. As I mentioned, there were roughly 25 unarmed blacks killed last year. That's a little more than 2 a month. So we could be doing this 2 times a month all day long, all year long. Never mind as many unarmed whites are killed. I mentioned one yesterday in Utah, 13-year-old autistic kid, shot a bunch of times. Mom called 911. Inconsistent evidence about whether or not the mother said he had a gun or said he didn't have a gun. The police say the mother said she did have a gun. I presume there's a dispatch call that confirms it or refutes it. And my point is, this happened, I think, September the 4th, this month. Nobody cared because the autistic child and his mom were white. Oh, well. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Taking your calls about Breonna Taylor. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town.